Hey guys, welcome back to Libby's Lounge, Patreon edition, where we are recording the unofficial audiobook for the Assassin's Alliance. We are on chapter 30. Let's get started. Chapter 30. Maureen. Maureen's head pounded, her shoulder throbbing with each pulse. She tried to pull the memories from the day before, but nothing came to mind. They must have partied hard. She groaned, rolling away from the pained shoulder, and pulled the covers higher, her feet brushing against another body in bed as she adjusted. She reached for them, fingers sliding over warm flesh. Drew, she breathed and moved closer to him, but her arm screamed in pain as she tried to move it across his body, so she just snuggled closer instead. Drew, what happened yesterday? She asked, laying her head on his chest, his unusually hairy chest. Her eyes shot open and she sat up, covers falling off from her very naked body. She scooped them up, the Greek villa materializing as the events of yesterday returned to her. Zach, Rosemary, the gunshot. She looked down at the blood-soaked bandage, the memory of the sedatives and drinks washing over her. A sinking feeling glued her to the bed, and she screwed up her face, turning to look at who was beside her, praying it was anyone else than who it had to be. But it was impossible to deny the red hair that met her gaze. Fuck. The word wasn't enough to convey just how fucked they were. But they couldn't have. There was no way she would. She loved Andrew, and she would never, ever betray Eileen like that. This must be some sick joke, or... With a rolling stomach, she pulled her knees up to hold the covers in place and used her good arm to wake him up. Seamus. 10 minutes, babe, he said sleepily. Maureen's cheeks heated and she hit him harder. Seamus, get up. He startled awake and looked around in confusion, gaze finding her. Her cheeks heated even more and his face paled, a look of horror morphing his features. He glanced at his bare chest, his hands touching it as if to confirm he was naked, and moved down beneath the covers. It was a wild guess, but Maureen bet he too wore nothing beneath the sheets. What happened last night? He asked, the pain in his voice a knife to her chest. She opened and closed her mouth a few times, then dropped her head to her knees, trying to pull anything at all. But there wasn't a memory in her head after they laid down on the couch. However, passing out fully clothed downstairs and ending up naked in bed upstairs, there were quite a few important ones missing. Tell me we didn't, Seamus pleaded. Her stomach turned and she turned her head to look at him, pressing her cheek into her knees. She wanted to tell him nothing happened, tell him everything was fine, but she couldn't lie to him, just like she couldn't lie last night. She had no idea what fuckery they'd gotten into. It could be completely innocent. Their clothes got soaking wet, or... Not a single thing came to mind of how they would wind up naked in bed together when there were 4 other bedrooms in this place. She buried her face back in her knees and shook her head. The mattress shifted beneath her as he moved closer, and she tensed, a shed of pain going down her arm, and she failed to stifle the cry. Mo. Her name broke as it left him. She whipped her head around. Wide eyes followed his fingers as they traveled feather-light down her back, large tears falling down his cheeks. Oh, shit, he whispered. Maureen tried to turn further, but couldn't see what he was looking at. It took more effort than she thought possible to clamber off the bed. She dragged the sheet with her, doing what she could to wrap it around herself one arm on the way to the bathroom. She flicked the light on and turned, looking over her shoulder at the mirror. A line of fresh hickeys and teeth mark trailed from her shoulder to her lower back, and a pit in her stomach opened up. No. Her mouth went dry, and she looked over at him through blurry eyes. Maureen. She swallowed around the impossible knot in her throat and looked back at the mirror. What had they done? Good God, this trip keeps getting more interesting. Maureen wished she could be swallowed up by that pit in her stomach, and she moved her gaze to the bedroom door. Rosemary leaned against the door jamb, Maureen's bra dangling off her finger. You were late, and it wasn't hard to find you. We weren't trying to hide, Maureen said. Maybe you should have been. When I saw the trail of clothes on the floor, I thought, surely not. I haven't been gone that long. It's not what you think, Seamus said, and Maureen looked over at him, the comforter wrapped around his lower body as he looked for something to put on. It looks like I want a front row seat to Eileen's castration of you. Rosemary, Maureen pleaded, you have no idea. I don't care, Rosemary said with a victory smile on her face. Put some clothes on. We have things to discuss. She disappeared from the doorway, and Maureen looked over to Seamus, digging around in his suitcase. He dropped the covers and pulled on boxers, and Maureen shifted her gaze, cheeks burning. She had seen him naked dozens of times. Privacy wasn't something they had on the team. Between training missions and emergencies, naked was sometimes just a state of being. But now it felt wrong, like she was breaking some unspoken law, and their consequences were not worth the risk. How could she have done this? A pulse of anger shot through her. She would never do this. If Seamus hadn't made her take that shot, this never could have happened. But she had been the one to drug him first. Another sob escaped her. If she had just trusted him. If he had trusted her. But none of that mattered now. The fact was, they'd done something, and Rosemary caught them red-handed. She leaned against the doorframe, trying to recall anything from the night before. There had to be something in her mind to tell her what they did or didn't do. The wet, sticky blood stained the white sheet by her shoulder, and the world wobbled. She leaned her face against the cool wood of the doorframe. It shouldn't feel this cool. Seamus's feet appeared in her vision. Did you hear me? Here. A shirt and sweatpants appeared in her vision, but she couldn't pull her eyes up, trying to stay on her feet. He put a hand on her forehead, and she closed her eyes, seeing if his touch would trigger something. Anything. You're burning up. Her memory remained a black hole. She gave a half laugh and looked up at him. Well, I was shot yesterday, Maureen said, pushing through the wave of nausea that threatened her. Then tossed down a fucking mountain, and you kinda just glued me back together. You climbed down the mountain, he countered, and you kinda just left the medical kit home in favor of a few extra bikinis. So whose fault is that? Her lips lifted, pulling a smile from him as well, before the memory, or lack of, the previous night returned to her, stealing it from her face. They both took a step back, and Maureen folded her arms across her chest, her heart slamming into her ribs. What are we going to do about Rosemary? He asked. My vote is to kill her, Maureen offered, but somehow I think that would be frowned upon. She holds all the cards now, Seamus said. What she thinks she knows and what she can prove are two different things. Maureen rolled her neck, trying to get her mind to clear. There's no proof. The proof is all over your back. He tossed the clothes on the bed and ran a hand over his hair. We have to clean that wound up. Shower. I'll get the supplies in your clothes. He turned to leave the room, and the pit in her stomach pulsed. This would ruin everything. Her happy life. Her being a part of something. Andrew. Seamus? He paused, but didn't look back at her. We'll figure this out, she promised. They'll never know. No matter what happens downstairs, we will do what we need to do. This will never leave Greece. The slump of his shoulders was his only answer before he left. You both look like shit, Rosemary said, scrunching her nose as they entered the kitchen. Maureen eyed the pieces of not just her clothes, but Seamus's tossed around the living room. Seamus's eyes skirted over the piles of clothes, too, but he avoided looking at her. He beelined for the coffee Rosemary must have brewed. Maureen lowered into the chair and leaned back. Let's get this over with. Legacy Inc. That's what you called it on the cliff. What is it? She asked as Seamus offered her one of the steaming cups of coffee and joined them at the table. We're just skipping over the part where I found you two in bed? That might keep Seamus quiet, but my loyalty is to Francis. Convince me this secret is worth keeping. Rosemary ran her tongue across her teeth before answering, giving her a smug look in return. You think my father won't move heaven and earth to throw you in a fucking hole somewhere when he finds out you can manipulate the sin? All that time working with Charlie. I'm sure he'll be very interested in taking a closer look at that research. You two sleeping together is just a bonus. Maureen laughed. You can't manipulate sin. That's what you think you have on me? Try again. I'll call Elijah myself and tell him let's fucking play before I lie to Francis. And what if we brought Mike Sloan in for a sin trip? Or Oliver Hale? I'm sure Hale Security will be interested in what they have shared with you. Maureen fought to tamp down the panic, trying to find purchase in her chest, managing to keep her face straight. She'd take a dozen sin trips to protect what she'd built for Francis, but Mike and Oliver? They wouldn't last 5 seconds. Zach is a yapper. You've been involved with them since you found yourself at our doorstep. I'm sure Francis would love to know his precious stray is a double agent. Why the fuck do you think I was here? Maureen said, furrowing her brow. I wasn't recruited because I was pretty. Rosemary narrowed her eyes, a smug smile lifting her lips. I'm curious if Hale knows that he has a legacy asset in the sheets of Mike Sloan. Or are you fucking Oliver too? Zach wasn't completely sure how that whole situation worked. Lots of alone time with both, and you do seem to get around. Rosemary's eyes flicked to Seamus, and Maureen curled her lip in disgust at the suggestion she was fucking her brother. You would sabotage a legacy mission? Seamus asked, pulling Rosemary's attention away from her, and Maureen took a big gulp of the hot coffee. I'll do whatever necessary to protect my current mission. For Legacy Inc., Maureen clarified. Rosemary looked between the two of them. Maureen could see the battle of what she was willing to share and surprised her by answering, Yes. And what mission is that? Maureen asked. To get the graveyard contact? Rosemary's cheeks flushed. I shouldn't have said that yesterday. I was hoping Zach would just spill. Why do you think he has that kind of access? Maureen asked. And you know who does? Rosemary asked. Maureen shot a glance at Seamus, catching his eye. If she let Rosemary know just how deep she was in with Hale, it would give Rosemary the power to ruin her liaison position and possibly compromise Seamus and Andrew. This was her mission, but every decision impacted them both. She tilted her head in question, waiting for Seamus to give her the go-ahead. He did. A question for a question, Maureen offered. You want information on Hale? I want information on Legacy Inc., and something tells me that if this blows up, only one of us will end up on the wrong side of your father's wrath. Rosemary's nose twitched in annoyance before she nodded. Fine. But don't you ever get sick of the laws? She asked. The rules that tie us to this life? Not really, Seamus said. Maureen frowned and she shook her head. She liked the laws. They made sense, kept order, and had a built-in accountability. Rosemary scoffed. If the laws didn't exist, do you think Krista would still be alive? Maureen's heart dropped into the pit in her stomach. What did you just say? Rosemary lifted her eyebrow, and Maureen launched herself from the seat and grabbed the front of Rosemary's shirt. Rosemary leaned back and the chair tipped, crashing to the floor. Maureen drove her knee into her sternum, the pain in her shoulder nothing compared to the storm churning inside her. What did you just fucking say? Maureen ground out. Rosemary grabbed onto her wrist but didn't push her off. Eileen didn't tell you. She gave a disbelieving laugh. Because the mission comes first. Fuck that. Krista flatlined last night. They couldn't bring her back. It was one of the reasons I was coming to you this morning. I thought you might have gotten the news and left. Krista was dead. Andrew's sweet, funny, and deadly baby sister. Dark spots began to fill her vision. Krista had died last night. Andrew was all alone, and she and Seamus had... Pain ripped through her shoulder, and she sucked in a breath as Seamus pulled her from Rosemary, the shirt slipping through Maureen's grip. Enough, Seamus demanded. He put a hand up to keep her back as he offered the other to Rosemary. She slapped his hand aside and rose to her feet, righting the chair. Quit stalling. Legacy Inc. It's the future, Rosemary said, sitting back down. She rolled her neck a few times and reached around Seamus for her coffee. We are underappreciated, undervalued, underutilized in the Legacy. We clean up after rogue politicians and underworlders. We save people, Maureen said, refocusing her attention. It didn't make a difference right now if Krista was dead or alive. If they didn't convince Rosemary to strike a deal, they may not make it home at all. We're puppets, Rosemary countered, bound by antiquated laws. Kids are dying because they are unlucky enough to be born into a blood family, or people are dumb enough to marry in. She eyed them, both outsiders in love with legacy heirs. Why do you think the blood families are dwindling to barely survivable numbers? Do you want your kids to be raised in this? You don't even like kids, Seamus said flatly. Cut the bull. It's a corporation. You're hired killers. So are you, Rosemary countered. Maureen returned to her seat, willing her heart to slow down and her mind to stop thinking about Krista and Andrew. There's a difference in what we do. There's a code and laws and accountability. We don't take innocent lives. Rosemary smirked. Keep telling yourself that. Don't you want to be paid for the work you do? Choose the assignments you take? Leave if you want to? She scoffed. Rosemary had no idea. There was no leaving this life. Maureen had tried. She'd murdered Olivia for a chance at freedom, and it dragged her kicking and screaming right back in. The idea sounded nice, but Maureen had lived that life already with Hale, and the sales pitch was always better than the product. What makes Legacy Inc. different from Hale Security or Onyx? Who says we need to be different? We're just better. With the connections of Legacy integrated with the flexibility and potential of Inc., it's the next generation. And how does Elijah expect this to play out with Legacy? It's in complete violation of the laws, Seamus said, and held up his hand, ticking off his fingers as he spoke. For profit, not for the people. Theft of Legacy secrets and assets. The list goes on. Rosemary shrugged. You would have to ask him about the specifics. My turn. What is your role in Hale Security? Informant, Maureen said, and then continued because if Rosemary dug too deep into how Legacy got involved in tracking down Zach, there was going to be a lot of questions she couldn't answer. And to save us the time, no, I don't know who the graveyard contact is. I was only fucking Mike, not Oliver, and yes, I could possibly get the information out of Peter, but I would need time. I left 6 months ago. Waltzing back in after Zach goes missing is a huge red flag. But the better option would be a sin trip for Zach. You don't know the right questions to ask him. I do. Maureen felt guilt burrow into her chest at the suggestion. Zach didn't have that kind of intel. But Rosemary didn't know that. Rosemary's mouth dropped open in surprise. Was that your plan if the contact didn't show? Yes, Maureen answered shortly, knowing that would please her. The plan had actually been an interrogation on both Zach and his contact. Sin was a backup, because Zach wouldn't survive a Sin trip. She'd seen the things he'd done. The dead would drown him. But if she controlled the narrative, Rosemary would never learn how deep her connection to Hale went. The idea of dosing Rosemary flitted through her mind and brought a small spark of pleasure. Maureen stamped it down. No one deserved a sin trip, but it was one of the best tools in their arsenal if all else failed. You still haven't convinced me why I should keep Legacy Inc. a secret from Francis. Rosemary held her gaze. My father will kill me if I fail? And let's pretend we don't give a rat's ass about your life, Seamus said, glaring at her from across the table. Rosemary rolled her eyes. He plans to tell Senior. He's going to ask for a pardon and leave the legacy. Maureen shook her head. That didn't happen. In the long history of the legacy, no one had ever left the legacy, let alone leave to start something in direct violation of the laws. But if you spill this before he has a chance? Rosemary shook her head, almost as if she didn't believe what she was about to say. He has someone in place to remove my grandfather, handing the legacy right over to him. And I don't want that. Well, fuck. That would be enough to keep Maureen's mouth shut. Not only was Rosemary's life on the line, all of theirs were. Why do you stay with him? She asked. Francis would give you asylum. Rosemary let out a long breath and stood. Contrary to popular belief, I care about my brothers and grandparents. I'm doing what I can to keep Legacy Inc. as far from Legacy as I can. But you know my father. Nothing stops him. Let's not give him a reason to do anything that can't be undone. Do we have a deal? Maureen looked at Seamus and raised her eyebrows. He hated Rosemary, but she would trust his judgment on this. Maureen's heart told her to trust her, but she too had been on the receiving end of Elijah's ire, and it was a terrifying place to be. Seamus's face darkened, but he nodded in agreement. We have a deal, Maureen said, and it felt like a knife in her throat. But we need to talk logistics. Rosemary's lips lifted. Of course. Let's start with Zach. I'll have a car here to pick you up in the morning. Get some sleep tonight, she said, and left the villa. And that is chapter 30. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. This was such a fun chapter to write. It got rewritten a couple times. And bringing Rosemary in on the discovery of Maureen and Seamus's accidental sleep together was a lot of fun. It took a lot of logistics to make it happen. Since I had predetermined before I wrote this book that, and even had the concept of the entire book and plotline, that Seamus and Maureen had Kat. I had to figure out now that I was telling the story, how did that actually happen without blowing everything up? And it kind of just naturally came to be. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we're going to roll right into chapter 31.